Morning Year 4, hope you're all okay. Welcome back to Mr. Stink. We're on chapter 19 today, and chapter 19 is called Supertramp. Guess it's all about Mr. Stink. Here we go then. I'm not apologising to him. You have to. Mr. Stink sat at the head of the kitchen table reading all about himself in the newspaper as Chloe stood over the stove frying some sausages for him. Her parents were arguing in the next room. It wasn't a conversation that their house guest was meant to hear, but they were so angry their voices became louder and louder. But he does smell. I know he smells, but you didn't have to say it on the television. Chloe smiled over at Mr. Stink. He looked so engrossed in all the headlines. Supertramp, stinky superstar steals the show, homeless man saves boring election, that he appeared not to be listening. Or maybe he'd put his rabbit droppings back in his ears. Obviously not, shouted Mother. Last night I had another call from the Prime Minister telling me I had embarrassed the party and he wants me to withdraw as a candidate. Good. What do you mean, good? This whole thing has turned you into a monster, shouted Dad. What? I am not a monster. Yes, you are. Monster, monster, monster. How dare you? Screamed Mother. Go and apologise to him now. No. Apologise. For a moment all you could hear was the sizzle of sausage fat and lard in the frying pan. Then, slowly, the door opened and Mother oozed like slime into the room. Her bouffant was still not what it was. She hesitated for a moment. Her husband appeared in the doorway and gave her a stern look. She did a little theatrical cough. Mr. Stink, she ventured. Yes, Mrs. Crumb, replied Mr. Stink without looking up, still engrossed in the papers. I would like to say sorry. What on earth for? He inquired. For what I said about you on Question Time last night, about you smelling, all of those things. It was terribly impolite. Thank you so much, Mrs. Call me Janet. Thank you so much, Mrs. Janet. It was rather hurtful, as I do pride myself on my personal hygiene. Indeed, I had a bath just before I went on the show. Well, you didn't really have a bath, did you? You had a pond. Yes, I suppose you're right. I did have a pond, and if you wish, I will have another pond next year, so I remain perfectly clean. But you're not clean, began Mother. Be nice, interrupted Dad forcibly. You don't know this, said Mother to Mr. Stink. But after what I said on Question Time last night, I've been asked by the Prime Minister to pull out of the election. Yes, I do know, actually. I heard you and your husband arguing just a moment ago in the living room. Oh, said Mother, uncharacteristically lost for words. Sausages are ready, shouted Chloe, trying to save her mother from further humiliation. I'd better be off to work now, love, said Dad. I won't be late. Yes, said Mother, waving him away distractedly. He discreetly picked up a couple of slices of bread and slipped them in his pocket on the way out. Chloe had heard the front door loudly open and close, and then the door to the room under the stairs very quietly do the same. Just 7 sausages today, please, Miss Chloe, said Mr. Stink. I don't want to put on weight. I have to think about my fan base. Fan base, said Mother, in a barely disguised jealous rage. The telephone, which had been crouching on the table doing very little, suddenly sang its little song. Chloe picked it up. Croom residence, who is speaking, please? It's the Prime Minister. Mother's face lit up with hope, and even her bouffant seemed to perk up a bit. Ah, yes. I knew my darling Dave would change his mind. He wants to talk to Mr. Stink, actually, continued Chloe. Mother's smile turned upside down. Mr. Stink picked up the receiver with a nonchalance that suggested he often received calls from world leaders. Stink here. Yes? Yes? Oh yes. Mum and Chloe studied his face like a map, trying to read from his reactions what the Prime Minister was saying. Yes. 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 Well, yes. Thank you, Prime Minister. Mr. Stink put the receiver down and sat back at the table to resume his now daily task of reading all about himself in the newspapers. Well? Asked Chloe. Yes, well, chimed Mother. The Prime Minister has invited me to go for tea at number 10 Downing Street today, said Mr. Stink matter-of-factly. He wants me to take over from you, Mrs. Crumb, as the local candidate. May I have those sausages now, please, Chloe? Oh dear, poor Mum. So she's been kicked out and Mr. Stink is taking her place by the looks of it. So, poor Mrs. Crumb. I do actually feel quite sorry for her because she hasn't asked for any of this, has she? She was pretty nasty, but she hasn't asked for any of this. I wonder if Mr. Stink is capable of doing this role. Maybe that's another clue to his past. I don't know. Well, I hope you enjoyed that chapter. Chapter 20 tomorrow is called Grubby Toilet Roll. Who knows? I have no idea. Hopefully it's not as gross as the rabbit dropping chapter. And I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you all again tomorrow.